Howdy folks, and welcome back. So today I'm talking about how to set up arrows for durability, for survival, for you don't have a resupply close by. You want these things as absolutely durable as possible and be able to shoot them over and over and over again without blowing up the arrow. Also being able to find the arrow or not, and also not losing pieces. Alright, so what have I done here? Kind of give you the back history. Just started out with like wooden arrows, like the Amazon specials that are like 40 bucks for a dozen, and they're okay. The weights tend to be all over the place, but they flew pretty straight. They were pretty well built. I broke a couple of them, but not bad. They were pretty durable. But as far as the consistency went, they were not there. Like one arrow was going to be heavier than another, which is going to alter flight, and we're talking about a spread of like 150 grains, which is quite a bit. I think it was 300 grains total, so the average was 150 or whatever. You get the idea. They were not consistent. So I went over to aluminum arrows. Not real keen on those. If they get bent, they're kind of done for. I don't like them too because they're clunky and noisy. And anyway, also they were camouflage, which is like, who makes a camouflage arrow? You know this thing's going to get lost. So I went over to these Easton Carbon Legacies. These come with like, everybody's using these. They're pretty good arrows. This is a 500 spine. I also played with 400 spine. Spine meaning the deflection that the arrow has, you know, off of the center line. So the higher the number, like a 500, is going to be more flexible than a 400. And that needs to be dialed in around how far you're pulling it back, how long the arrow is, how much you've added weight-wise to the front, to the back. There's a whole lot of things that go on. If you need to look into all that, like you don't know where you're going, Three Rivers Archery has a pretty good calculator, spine calculator, or call them, honestly. Okay, so what have I done to beef up this arrow to make this thing a better arrow? The first thing I've done is I've glued an insert into the front. These came as like, they came with inserts, but none of that was glued in. You had to cut the arrow to length. These are 31.5, which is considered a pretty long arrow. Glue in my insert, and now I can thread field points or broadheads or whatever into that insert, right? The problem that I was having was if I'm taking the shots, small game in particular, something down on the ground, this arrow is coming in, and it's really rocky around here. And that arrow is smack a rock somewhere, you know, because of a miss or whatever. Or even just target practicing. I'm out there just stump shooting. And what would happen is that insert would get jammed up inside of the carbon tube and essentially start a split on the arrow. And the arrow's cooked at that point. Nothing you can do about it. So I found these outserts on Amazon that this screws into. I actually found those for my wooden arrows, put them on my wooden arrows, and that way I could put whatever tip I wanted on it without having to glue a different one on. And they work good for that. And I was like, well, wait a second here. Maybe I could add that over top of the insert. So now I got a couple things going on. Number one, the arrow is much stronger at the front, being glued into that. If it does strike something, like even if it mangles this, I've still got an arrow. It didn't split the arrow down. I could replace this. Or if I couldn't replace this, I still have the insert on the inside, and I can take the tip off of that one and thread it into the insert, and the arrow flight is not that much different. This thing doesn't weigh all that much. It's aluminum. So I'm not concerned that much about a slight difference in the tip weight. They shoot about the same. I've tried it both ways. The other thing is I've set this up with, I've used hot glue gun glue in there. So if I, instead of using like super glue, now the inner part is super glue, or whatever the arrow glue is, it's essentially super glue. Using the hot glue gun on this outer part, I can heat this up, stick it in the fire, heat it up, and then pop it right back out and glue it back on to something else. So if I had like one arrow and the tip got damaged, the other arrow, I split the arrow, it got stepped on, it got snagged, it got broken down here. I can take that in the field, heat that up, push it onto the other one, and rock and roll, and essentially build an arrow without having to, super glue can be tough to take back off. And then what do? You find some pine sap or something to glue it back on. But yeah, just being able to heat that glue up, reset it, and go works. The other thing is glue in your knock, because if you hit something hard, that knock a lot of times pops out. These are set up to be directional so that it has a little knock sticking out of it, like a little place where you can feel with your finger, a little fin of plastic that comes off that should align with your odd colored cock feather, right? The other thing I've done is taken reflective tenacious tape and taped it onto these so that if the arrow does take a dive underneath the grass or something like that, and I have a general idea of where it is, I can go out with my headlamp at night and go, okay, I know I lost it in this square somewhere, and start sweeping that area, and that will stand out like big time. I've had arrows that you would not believe that I could have possibly found down underneath the grass and stuff, and that little glow, it's right there. One more thing that I forgot to mention is the flu-flu arrows. Observant viewers would have noticed this in the background. So these have especially large vanes. There's also 4 of them instead of 3. These are designed for shorter shots. The flight characteristics are very similar to the other arrows, out to about 18-20 yards. After that, these start slowing down dramatically. They're also very noisy when they fly. They're actually pretty cool to hear fly. But I've set these up pretty much identically, with the insert, outsert on the front, the reflective tape on the back, and very brightly colored fletchings. And if you're going to take a shot where you're like, oh man, I'm not so sure this arrow could overextend past that squirrel on a limb and be back over that hill somewhere and I might never find it, this is the arrow to pull out, as long as it's not too far away. But I don't keep many of these, like 2 in my quiver, but they're worthwhile when you need them. So yeah, that's the things that I've done to beef up these arrows, and maybe that gives you some ideas. Sayonara. Have a good day.